It's a little different experience studying film at NID and being taught by someone who studied film at FTII. Being one of his initial batch students, where I learned how to, for the first time, how to write for the screen. So yeah, it's been interesting. What I want to know from Arun specifically regarding this book, Purab or Paschim, is why do we need a villain in any story?
The villains are needed for two primary reasons. One is that number one is villains get to do things legally in a narrative which we are morally and legally not allowed to do. So we can have vicarious pleasure. Pran can sort of beat people around, and Prem Chopra can, sort of molest women, and Shetty can sort of throw people around, and Helen can dance in a seductive manner, and Bindu can do that. And we massively enjoy it because we are not allowed to do that. Actually, this is true for the films, Hindi films till the about 80s. After that, the sort of the pattern changed. But the villains got to do what we would want to do, but we couldn't do. So villains had all the fun. In a 3-hour film, they had fun for 2.5 hours, and for half an hour, they were bashed around a little. And then there will be a group photo. This I remember very clearly. And this is true for films till the 70s. There has to be a group photo in the end, and they lived happily thereafter and stuff like that. The second reason why we must have villains is that we must other people. We are afraid of people who are unlike us. So people who have a different religion, people who belong to a different country, people who belong to a different physicality, like people who are, for example, handicapped, or people who belong to a gender orientation which does not fit into the heterosexual formula. These are the people we are afraid of. And whatever we are afraid of, we must other. The advantage of othering is that therefore we are the neat and clean guys and they are the dirty guys. For example, in conflict areas, and which Indian Hindi cinema has been othering, there are many conflict areas in this country, and those conflict areas, whenever we make a film on, either whether it is Kashmir or in the Northeast or anywhere, it's very clear who are the villains and who are the heroes. By making othering people, we make them, we make it easy for us to hate them. It becomes simpler to hate someone if you can villainize that person. It's difficult now. It's no longer easy to point out who is the villain and who is the hero. And those kind of crude narratives are no longer being made where it was clear. But nevertheless, just scratch the surface and you can see the othering. The othering is much more subtle now. Yeah, and the villainy is much more subtle now.
Especially in your book, all the films that you're talking about, whether it's the Westerners, whether it's the Western culture, whether it's the neighbors, all these characters still exist. Have we stopped villainizing them, or have we not been able to deal with it yet? And what has happened that villainy has changed after the 80s?
What has happened is that like there are two kinds of strands. One is the Vishal Bharadwaj kind of territory where villainy has truly got grey, in the sense the hero is the villain. Then there are films like Kurban, for example, by Rensil de Silva, which is talking about terrorism. But when you talk about terrorism, you connect it very subtly to a certain community, to a certain religion, to a certain region. And you are not saying they are terrorists, but you are implying that. You're implying that. The implications are much more sophisticated. A film like Lagan, Lagan is not portraying the British in such crude manners. But Captain Russell, because he is British, he can't possibly be good. Yeah. So as opposed to Kranti and the crude portrayal of the British in Kranti, or in Purab Aur Paschim, for example, and Lagan gets a British woman in love with our native hero. But eventually, he's a bad man. He doesn't play the game. The irony of Lagan is that the Britishers don't play cricket honestly. And while the Indians, the Desis who have picked it up from Gilli Danda, actually play it by the rule book. So they don't play the game. This is, of course, Ashutosh Gowarikar is very, very intelligent and he knows what he is doing. And Amir Khan is a great actor and he knows what he is doing. But definitely, the villain is clear. The British cannot but be villains in a Hindi film. How come we were so stupid that a group of people from a tiny island could conquer us? There must be something wrong with us as well. No, the narrative cannot only portray the British as stupid and cruel. They were not always that. Like the book which I was originally writing, and this is one part of that book, is going to end with the films of Vishal Bharadwaj, because I think he's a very interesting exposition of how the erstwhile villain became the hero. And there was no issue because you understood that human beings are fallible. But there is another set, and of late it has become so much the trend in Hindi cinema, whether for the big screen or for internet platforms, to hide this fact in sophistry. You are still doing what Manoj Kumar used to do.
Right.
Yeah, but you are doing it in a sophisticated manner, pretending that you are not biased, pretending you are not othering people. Right now, the villainy is so much more dangerous because it's hidden in apparent equanimity.
What I think is, in this kind of a hidden capitalist economy that we are living in right now, not hidden anymore, but through the 90s and through the 2000s, we were not accepting that we are capitalist. We have become capitalist. But I feel that every other person is a villain, क्योंकि अपनी कहानी के तो हम ही हीरो रहेंगे, तो हमारे लिए हर कोई विलेन ही हो गया.
Correct.
So that becomes a very interesting problem for a filmmaker or for a screenwriter. So I would like to see how we take villainy from now onwards.
I think these strands, two strands will continue, because one strand is a quasi-political agenda where you have to other people in order to get them out of your way. And communication media, including cinema and television, will be used to do that for the foreseeable future, where you will want to other people and get them out of the national, quote-unquote, national mainstream. And so there will be villains and heroes, but they will be contextual. Contexts will become much more important, because once you have a context, then you can understand. Like, for example, all of us have sinned, no? But when we sin, there is a context and there is a time and place and space to it, no? And then once you are out of that context, then you can look at your life and look and judge yourself once again and reposition yourself. Our morality is contextual and personal, but this is a very personal take on villainy. I think we are, as you rightly said, we are all villains if given the situation. But since society expects us to behave in a certain way, we make compromises. Yeah, we are heroes and villains given contexts, and all of us are capable of that. There is no one born a villain or a hero.
If you take this film Diwar, in which the hero was a rebel, but he was a smuggler. He was indulging in illegal activities as per this thing, but he's still considered the hero. And even the gray hero had a bigger villain to contend with, which again brings us back, what makes a good villain in a film?
There are two kinds of films. No, one is the retro film.
Right.
What makes a good villain till the 70s is Pran or Prem Chopra or Gulshan Grover or Helen or Bindu or Sonia Sahni or all of those characters. What makes a good villain today is Pankaj Kapoor in Maqbool. What makes a good villain in today's context is what's his name in Heather? Shahid Kapoor. That's a good villain. I remember one of the most enjoyable villains in recent times for me has been Khosla Ka Ghosla mein wo kaun the wo?
Baman Irani.
And that thing on his table, no?
Yeah, right.
Amazing villainy and very classical villain and still very modern, that kind of stuff. If you look at Dibaka Banerjee's film Oye Lucky Lucky Oye,
Yeah.
and even that 3-in-1 short film Love, Sex and Dhoka,
right.
ये सारे में villains हैं boss. I mean, हमारे समाज में, in this country of ours, horrible things happen, and terrible villainy in real life happens. In cinema, nothing like that happens, because even when Pran was there, it was sanitized villainy.
Scam 92, which portrays Harshad Mehta's story and the rise and eventual fall in the stock market. There's a discussion out there whether he did was right, what he did was right or wrong. So are we looking at something where at pieces, fiction pieces, where we are glorifying villainy sometimes?
Clearly, no, cinema is a reflection of the society we live in. Cinema doesn't create the society we live in. Right. Harshad Mehta has been a hero for the longest of time in certain circles in India, but it has not been officially possible to say.
Right.
What was not officially possible to say in the 70s, for example, is now official credo and legal. So this is also related to what the current Samaj thinks is legal to say, because it was illegal to say some of the things which are being said and some of the people who are being praised in the 70s, for example. Yeah, and they are in the political sphere, they are in the economic sphere, they are in the social cultural spheres, etc., etc. Capitalism and a certain economic system makes it legal what was illegal in a socialistic system. So Harshad Mehta was illegal in a quasi-socialist system. Harshad Mehta is a hero in today's system, my dear.
How will a hero become a hero if there's no villain? Who will he fight? Who will
he will fight with himself or herself. अपनी अंतरात्मा की आवाज is the hero. और उसके जो predilections हैं कि मुझे पाना है, मुझे खाना है, मुझे सब कुछ चाहिए. It will keep changing depending on what the society accepts as the norm. Yes. What as the society in India currently accepts as the norm is not what your parent society accepted as the norm. True. So the norm has shifted. The goalposts have shifted. Today's heroes will be tomorrow's stupid, because it will become something else. The goalposts keep shifting, society keeps shifting. So it's the same, it's the conflict between the devil and the angel. Right. So ये तो हर समय रहेगा, मगर ये अंदर है.
Thank you. What an exciting discussion. Wow. The villain in all of us. After this amazing discussion, we're now going to take a quick behind the scenes look on how this book was actually made. Now, give you a little preview of what to expect when you receive the copy. So for that, I'd like to introduce my colleagues, Siddhartha Tripathi, who is the illustrator of this book, Vineet Gedam, who is the designer, and Tarun Deep, who is the designer, but also an amazing mentor to the design of this book. So we'll start with Siddharth. Siddharth, as an illustrator, could you share with us what was your experience of working on this book?
How Arun explained to all of us the way he sees the villains, no? It was very strange because I have watched all the films. I have been watching these films again and again. But for some reason, I was not being able to see the way Arun was seeing the villains as, So for me, I remember having a lot of discussions with Arun once in a while. And he used to give me more hints ki rather than drawing that particular villain like the way you are drawing, you have to depict him in a different way.
Siddharth's illustrations and Vineet and Tarun's art direction and design have really added tremendous value to the book.
It was one of the most fun projects that I did at NID, especially because two of my deep interests came together in this project. One is films and the other was publications and print and typography, right from where the illustrations would go to the typeface. There were different sections in the book, in each chapter, which we had to take care, right from the main body of the chapter to the synopsis. Each chapter has a different icon. Each and every chapter has a dedicated section separator, which has a huge illustration which tells something about that particular film, that particular chapter.
Book has a comic book kind of a quality to it. How was that decision taken? Why didn't you go color?
No, Hitesh, I think, that's a very, very important question. And the bottom line is that we wanted more and more people to read Arun's book. And that means that I don't want to spend too much money in the printing costs.
Right.
Because the moment you spend more money in the printing, your MRP also increases. And it's good fun to have, especially for this kind of a book, which is about films, as much as about villains, as much as it is about Arun, and as much as it is about the technicolor Indian cinema, which all of us have subconsciously in our mind. Let's have the illustration black and white and simple, and let the reader imagine in his or her mind. When the first draft of the manuscript came, I sort of started scratching my head, because from a book design perspective, the text was very, very complex. It has 4 major stories, 4 different films he's talking about, and all 4 of them have to be given equal justice. B, there is a certain humor or tongue-in-cheek humor in his narrative, the way he is writing. Third, he's talking about Indian cinema, he's talking about Bollywood, he's talking about Hindi picture. So the whole text is peppered with dialogues which are originally in Hindi language, but they are written in the English script, which means there are a lot of text is going to be punctuated with italics typefaces, right? So that level, the concern was that कि यार ये बहुत heavy हो जाएगा. So how do we break it into different layers so that a reader who is in hurry can just look at the quotes which are near the thumb when you flip through the book. There are these quotes which come near your thumb on the margin. Because of the complexity of the text, Vineet and me at some point of time took a call that we will go with a conventional serif typeface. So what appears to be a very simple design, it went through a lot of iterations and a lot of test prints and a lot of, cracking it kind of a thing.